Okay, hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's event, which is our final event for our 2025 Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design speaker series, hosted by the Department of Digital Media and Design at the University of Connecticut. To paraphrase James Baldwin, nothing can be changed until it is faced. This is certainly true of the inequities that have historically shaped the entertainment industry, both on screen and behind the scenes. We would like to begin today's event by acknowledging that the land on which we gather here in Storrs, Connecticut is the territory of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Scatacoke, Golden Hill Pagosset, Nipmuc, and Tenape peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. Today's event, Games as Affirmation, a conversation with Gordon Bellamy, will feature a fireside chat with our special guest, Gordon Bellamy. For our virtual audience, please take advantage of the YouTube chat box to submit questions for our guests so that we can include them in our conversation. I'm Catherine Massoud, and I'm your host for this evening's event. I'm a filmmaker with decades of experience in both fiction and documentary, and I'm also an assistant professor in residence and member of the film faculty in the Department of Digital Media and Design. Digital Media and Design is a young department founded in 2013, which has rapidly grown to over 350 undergraduate and graduate students and 26 full-time faculty. We have 7 undergraduate concentrations across the full digital media spectrum: film production, animation, interactivity, business, and the humanities at both Storrs and our Stanford campuses. In our department, we value and celebrate our students' diverse backgrounds, and we support their development both as individuals and as professional media creators. Now in its 5th year, Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design Speaker Series is one celebration of these shared values. Now, on to our show. I'd like to welcome, first of all, today's co-hosts and DMD students, Aqua, Troran Trend, and Ali Hopper. Aqua Troran Trend is a filmmaker studying digital media and design with a concentration in film and video production at UConn. They've explored a wide range of mediums, including narrative film, screenwriting, animation, graphic design, and illustration. Their work is inspired by both independent queer film and the local music scene, and they aim to create art that represents the communities that they are a part of. Aqua, great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And Ali Hopper is a digital media and design student concentrating in motion design and animation. She specializes in 2D animation and digital illustration, bringing stories to life with expressive visuals. Ali is super passionate about what she does and is always looking for creative ways to connect with people through her work. Ali, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Great. And now on to our guest. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome today's guest, Gordon Bellamy. Gordon has played key business and product leadership roles at Tencent, Electronic Arts, and as a designer on Madden NFL football and MTV. He served as executive director of both the game industry's trade organization, the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and the International Game Developers Association. He's also a professor and the director of cinematic ethics at USC's School of Cinematic Arts. He holds a BA in engineering from Harvard College. Welcome, Gordon. So great to have you here. Now I'm going to hand it over to you and our student co-hosts.
Thank you for having me. Oh, and recording. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here. I put my headset on so I could be in sync with the audio, because I can hear you through the feed perfectly now. And Aqua and Ali, yeah, just thankful to be here. Thank you for having me. And I know you're muted, but I'm going to wait for all your questions. Now I know your extensive backgrounds. I know we can go to the deep end of pool of learning.
I'll start with the first question. Was there any specific game that inspired you to enter the gaming industry, and why that game?
Sure, games that inspired me. So when I was coming up, so games were moving from the arcade to the home. So I spent a lot of time going to the arcade to play games, and that was a place I was able to connect with folks and just, really just sort of be myself. Uh, and I think, like if I think about today, like online games would probably be the closest equivalent, where people are able to go on, connect with other people who, like the same games as them. So you just think about, like, I don't know if anyone plays Marvel Rivals here now, but that's a big thing where I'll go and play some Marvel Rivals, and whether it be with my friends or with new folks, I don't know. It's a place where I just feel my whole self. So, to answer your question directly, it was probably more location. I think going to the arcades is what made me think, like, how could this be more a part of my life all the time? Like, not just when the arcade is open and just when I have quarters at a big level. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that answer. I guess seeing as a lot of our audience are DMD students, specifically game design, we were going to ask what kind of skills or qualities do gaming companies or people who can employ people into game dev
Right.
look for these days?
Yeah. So I think there's three main pillars, right? If I'm thinking about going to actually finding work today. And so those pillars, and this, regardless of your specialty, right? Because, for example, you two have different specialties, right? But what I think you'll share is what I'll call transformer spark, like your original voice. Sometimes it's described as passion, right? But if I ask you, when we were talking before about critical media literacy, you have a clear passion for it that you authentically are able to reference through work. Allie, same thing around what you do. We started talking about Nintendo, and you're like, right? Like there is a spark there that you express through your body of work, right? Your portfolio, but also through how you communicate, how you talk about your craft. That's number one. If people don't have that, then they can be perceived as like a dilettante. And what's a dilettante in this case? It's someone who has all the skills. Like I took all the classes, but I don't really care. I'm not that involved. I just took all the classes. Here's my GPA. Like here are the facts, but there is no, I don't know, flavor to the steak, as it were. Like that is me, my voice. Okay. The second pillar is proficiency. Okay. Which is I can literally do something well. Like if you give me uh, Photoshop or Premiere, I know how it works. I can produce work. I can solve problems, so on and so forth. So whether that be in Unity or C++ or Photoshop or audio tools, right? There's a level of just proficiency that people have, and especially young people, because many of you have been pursuing your technical proficiency since you were teenagers or earlier now. So you're actually like 10 years in to whatever it is that you're thinking about expressing yourself. The third part, the third, I guess, leg or pillar is your soft skills. And by that I mean your ability to socially engage with people who have these jobs to offer, that they want to spend more time with you. And that takes many forms. Some people are born into it. They're like, oh, my mom worked here. Don't you want to spend more time with me? Or, oh, I went to the University of Connecticut. And they're like, oh my God, go Huskies. Oh, what dorm are you in? Blah, 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 right? Um, but however you arrive at it, some people you know from Discord, some people you met playing D&D or Marvel Rivals or whatever. No wrong answers, but it's actually the same skill, which is if you think about like an entry level or internship or early position, there's many people who can do it, okay, who have the basic skills to do it, right? Who can learn on the job. What there aren't are that many people who the people who are giving the job trust and want to spend more time with. That's actually a very narrow set of people that they're like, oh, I want to spend more time with you. I want to um, not think of your entry level role as a tax I've got to pay, but it's like an investment. Oh, I want to invest in you, and you're going to learn things, and it's going to be great. I want to be a part of it. You're a professor. You're a professor. They're invested in you, right? They aren't like sitting around with like a bucket full of A's, B's, and C's just to dole out at the end and be like, oh, right? They're like, oh, look, you learned something. You grew. This is fulfilling. That's no different than an entry-level position because remember, everyone knows you don't know. Everyone on the other side who has a job, they know you don't know. You've never been, right? That's not it. They're looking for who do I want to invest in to spend more time with for them to grow. I'd offer the other two questions they're going to ask are going to be your technical proficiency, like have they shown in the past that they can learn to do things? And the other is that original voice. Like, you know what I mean? Do they have a story, like a truth, not a story? Do they have a truth that I'm like, oh, they care, right? Like lots of people can do it, but this one cares. I care. That's why I'm here in this job, right? Let me bring them in. I feel as though if you're strong in those three areas, then you're well positioned to move forward. The other part would be that it's a numbers game, right? And so oftentimes in the past, in olden times, people grew up where they were from. They knew people from their hometown. They got a job at the big company where they lived. That was their life. Now you live in a global time where you can work anywhere, where you could know you have friends who you met on Instagram or TikTok or whatever who are all over the place, right? Well, the same with work. And so there's a resource called Game Dev Map, which if you've never looked at it, I mean, whoever you are at home at YouTube, go there right now. It's like gamedevmap.com. And then you'll see a map of the world. You can click on any city and you will see all these companies that are doing games. Once you go like, oh, wait a second, I'm part of this big giant aquarium. My opportunity is out there somewhere. I think it lifts a lot of weight off people's shoulders because otherwise you're like, oh, I just know what I've heard of. Like the game I play right now and the studio that is 10 miles from my school. Like, you know what I mean? But that's not the world, right? The world is the world. And so once you free your mind of that, you go, oh, okay, this is just a numbers game because it's a matter of finding people who like those three things about me and timing, right? I know it's a long answer, but a great way to think about it would be like if you're looking for a new roommate, okay? If you want a new roommate to live with you, well, will they pay the rent on time? Will they tidy up, right? Do you like them? Okay. The fourth, but most important thing is actually timing. There's only so much time that you need a new roommate. Sometimes they might be the best person. They could be your best friend, best teammate, whatever, but you still need a new roommate right now. It's nothing personal, right? And so once you go, oh, wait a second, these other people, these jobs all have timing. These organizations all have timing. Oh, got it. I might be perfect. It might not be the right time. Oh, right. And that's, I think a lot of that, the barrier that exists now is people feeling a sense of belonging, right? Versus feeling a need to transact with the game industry and being like, oh, well, if you feel like you belong, well, then it's just a matter of finding your right spot. Like on campus, if you go to the University of Connecticut, well, then you can go and eat where you want to eat and do what you want to do, take classes, blah, 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 blah. If you don't feel you go to University of Connecticut, well, then everything seems really hard. Going to a class, getting a meal, going to a game, like there's all sorts of like, right? Game industry is sort of the same way, I feel. And so part of the work we do, part of why I'm here now, is to sort of have that sense of belonging and be like, oh, you're already in the game industry. You just don't have the right role yet. That happens to everybody in all ages, not just yours, like all ages. That's okay. Ask more questions. Work on your 3 pillars. It'll be great. Sorry, long answer, but that's how I feel. You can do it.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I actually did just search up what you said, the game dev map, and it's like so huge. Like I only know like obviously the more popular ones, but this gives me like more hope that like there are like other ones that do exist and that there's more than just like the big companies out there.
Yeah, exactly. But right, and this is the difference between, I guess, communication and marketing. The big companies are marketed to you because they've got marketing budgets, market. But yeah, communication, information, right? Like even in this moment, right, you're better off. Of course you are. Another thing would be, I mean, sorry, just real talk, making it practical, would be LinkedIn. Okay. And people look at LinkedIn sometimes for jobs, but I'd suggest you use it to look for people, okay? Because people, how do I describe this? Like everyone, okay, this is class. Everyone plays video games. Has everyone played like think of one, RTS, a game which has fog of war, like Civilization or Age of Empires, a game where you're trying to take over the whole world, but you can't see the whole world. No, okay. Um, Marvel Rivals. Okay, when you play Marvel Rivals, you can only see what you can see, but your teammates can see things that you can't see and communicate to them to you, right? Well, the same thing with the game industry. Like, not everyone you need has a job to hire you, but what they have is a world behind them where they can be exposing you to opportunities that are invisible to you. Okay? So like me and your professor, we're both professors, so we can talk professor talk, and we can talk about all sorts of things, right? That can help you benefit. And you don't need to know the history of USC and everything. You just need to listen to your professor, who knows me, fog of war, right? Well, it's the same thing around your job search and your community search. Your community search. Is it usually building a community that you want to be a part of, not just a set of jobs, right? Because you can always get laid off from a job or fired from a job. You can't get laid off from your community. It's your community. Like you're a part of it, like the communities that you're already identified with or that you already participate in, right? It's different than the tasks, but all the tasks that are related to that community are easier if you're an active member of that community. Once again, long answer, but yeah, LinkedIn, I'd make it home for everyone in class. What I would do if I was trying to get into games and I was you in your seat, the first thing I would do would be go on LinkedIn, get everyone, and then I would go people who went to University of Connecticut, and then choose the industry, games industry, computer games industry, and University of Connecticut alums, right? And I'd immediately have a list of people who already went to Connecticut. They've already been in your chair, who are already doing stuff. And it doesn't matter if you want a job with them or not. What matters is them opening their fog of war to you. And you'd be like, I'm a motion graphics person. They're like, well, I'm more cinematic. Great. I love that for you both. How can I help you? Right? Um, and so, like I was saying, like sort of long-windedly before, some people are born into this. They are second generation game industry. Literally, their parents worked at Activision or EA or Sony or whatever, right? And the parents are like, oh, let me help you. You should talk to Larry. You should talk to Catherine. You should talk to Susan. Duh. For those of you who are first generation, you're part of a proud tradition being at University of Connecticut. So you should tap into it, right? There's other motion graphic designers in the industry. So they are like you somewhere, right? Hi, I'm Allie, right? Like we have something in common. Help, right? Because they already know, right? Unlike a job application where they're looking to solve a problem, like that's different than just people wanting to help you move forward in your career. There's different questions, but you don't have to, you don't want to. You should consider asking both questions. They don't have to be one or the other. So anyway, that's how I think about it for jobs and stuff. That's because it's hard, frankly, but it's harder if you're disconnected. Like I'd say it's darn near impossible is too strong a word, but it's implausible because you're competing with people who are doing the work, right? Who have your same skills, but are also doing that social, that work, that community work.
Yeah, thank you for that. I feel like maybe we are kind of living in an ideal world where the internet, allows us to connect with people, which, especially for jobs in creative industries, opens up a lot more possibilities. But our next question, kind of similarly along the line of education, is what steps can schools and other places of education take to use games as tools for engagement or, other things, diversity, etc.?
Sure. Well, let me go reverse, because diversity is not an etc. Diversity is central and key and core to you thriving, because first you must be before you can even enjoy playing the games, right? Like, I sort of, yeah, that the most important thing. Sorry, the most important thing is your safety. The next most important thing is your trust that you're able to be your whole self to learn, in the school. So one of the things which is great about games, I mean, there's many great things about games and how they can be used. But one we were talking about before is that games today are founded upon connectivity and connection and community. So a lot of the values that make you effective when playing games would actually also make you effective in being a better teammate for making games, for doing the work around games. Like, a lot of that you can work out playing games, right? And so having more of a culture where we mix, especially for your generation, which I'll say is digitally native. And by that I mean, for me, digital games came of age in my adulthood as a mainstream thing. Cell phones happened in my adulthood, right? They weren't always there. I wasn't always connected in the way that many young people are today. And so I think part of you meeting each other where you are is games, right? Like, it is normal. You don't got to explain why. I think that that game literacy is cultural literacy now. And the same way that you would be expected to navigate, professional and personal spaces with a knowledge of TV. For example, I bet, like, me and Catherine, we both know Who Shot JR, as example, right? And there's moments that we all know that are media moments. And many of those media experiences now happen in games, right? And so it'd be um it'd be stranger nowadays for someone to neither play games nor watch game content. If someone was like, I have never seen a streamer, I have never watched games on my phone or monitor, right? That actually would be like, oh, like, how'd you miss all the memes? How'd you miss everything, right? And so part of us, in cultivating a literate generation, it's incumbent upon us to integrate games, into what we do. Uh, it's also now an output where not only games themselves, but the business of games and the media around games, the motion graphics, the trailers, the TikToks, are a gigantic industry craft of which your generation is going to be a part. So why not you, right? And there's going to be so much more intersectionality where it's normal for popular linear media to have an interactive element now, for it to have some sort of game, some sort of experience that is engaging, interactive. Um, the same way. Oh, okay. In Back in the day, like, if something was really big at Disney that we saw in a Disney movie, then you would maybe see it at Disneyland or Disney World. You're like, oh my God, I'm on this ride. It's based on the movie. Or, oh, there's this person in the outfit. They've come to life, right? But for your time, it would be, you'd probably experience them mostly on your tablet or phone long before you experience any of these other things, right? Like, that is normal. right? You're like, oh yeah, my tablet, the character, I learned to add with them or whatever you did, right? Like, and so uh, there's no looking back on digital connectivity and interactive digital connectivity, which you might call games, uh, being something that we as academic institutions, like helping lead culture through knowledge sharing, well, you got to have games in the mix, right? You just have to. Um, I love games, so for me, it's easy. I'm like, yay! But to not do it would be almost hard if you were intentionally trying to cultivate the next generation of learners, thinkers, doers. Dot dot dot. I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess my the shorter answer would be that games should be integrated curricularly, um, extracurricularly through like clubs and activities, but also just socially through the culture of university communities. That's the short answer.
Awesome. Next question that we have is, how has your identity affected the way you approach your profession, and do you see it as a strength?
Sure. So when you say identity, okay, so for those at home, I am a queer, I am African American, I am what else matters? I'm a really good friend. I love dodgeball, pineapple chunks. I love electronic dance music. So I love the rave. And um all of these identities, part of my adulthood has been allowing these identities to coexist. So when I was younger, I would compartmentalize my identities, right? And I'd be music with music people, queer with queer people, black with black people, uh, soccer with soccer people, dot, 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 dot. And I devoted a lot of energy to that compartmentalization, right? And for me, that was revolved around safety, right? Like I felt I would be safer if I could be with like people at like times. But what that kept me from doing was being my whole self, right? Being fabulous, because all these things can coexist. It turns out everyone else, when you start to talk about it, is like a coexisting of different intersectionalities, right, that are going on, visible or invisible, right? And that is when some of the best stuff, growth, sharing, learning, trust happens. And that trust is the foundation for building things which last. And whether those be relationships, institutions, um, families, uh, all of those are grounded in a trust that, like, hey, we're going to have some differences, but I'm going to be there for you. And that difference is going to coexist. Right. And so for me, games, okay, were a place where um, universes and rule sets existed. Everyone had already agreed to them. We agreed this is how we're going to treat each other. This is what a turn is. This is what I get, whatever the rule, right, for the game. Doesn't matter if it was Yahtzee or Monopoly or Mario Kart or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's rules, right? We can leave all of our identity behind for a second and just be in this game. Okay. Then I consensually could bring my own self into the game space, right? And that for me is an affordance that the real world, sorry, the earth, the non-game world does not always provide. Okay. And so for me, uh, games will always be this beautiful default place where I'm able to grow into being my whole self inside of these frameworks. Okay. And that's like, once again, I go back, safety, trust, loyalty, goodness, right? The world cannot provide you with safe spaces, default spaces for sure, but games have, in some places, provided better places for people to be default. Are they a utopia? Of course not, right? But I have found that some of the dystopic moments are really nothing to do with the game. They're about people bringing in biases and problems from outside the game, have nothing to do with the game, into the game, and being like, let me make this your problem here in this game space. But for the most part, games themselves, yeah, it's been gravy and great, um and I'm super grateful. I mean, games have brought me here. I would not be talking to you, right? Without games, like being a unique bridge through games, academia, trust, people, like all the things. I don't know if so in school, I studied environmental engineering and hydraulic water treatment. I don't know if water treatment would have brought us together, like in the same way, right? To drive outcomes which are not only executive, like find a job, create industry, but also just people trying to live life, go forward together. So long answer once again, but yeah, for me, games have been a complementary part of my identity. I am definitely a gamer. People go, "Are you a gamer?" I'm a gamer. Like, I'm a gamer. However, it's so interesting when you're a gamer, you can notice that there's so many dimensionalities to even that, right? Because there's people who are super proficient, like they're achieve like Bartle. You study Bartle types and stuff. So Bartle types, I'll be educational. Bartle types are motivations for play. People playing the same game have very different motivations for playing the game. So, for example, the main four categories were achievers, like high score getters, explorers, who are people that get the codes, who like know where everything is in the game. Socializers, like me. I just want to spend time with you. Like, honestly, we win or lose, I'm really actually okay. I literally just want to have a good time with you. And also killers, like, people who love to wait on spawn points, who like to, oh, there you go. Okay, see, who love to act on other, but the ones, right? They find infinite joy, just like, I just want to act on the other people. That's what makes me happy, right? Anyway, these motivations coexist in the game world, but in order to truly enjoy them, first you must be gamer, and then be like, oh, look at that, and what I find, sorry, everyone's different, is a lot of things that separate us external to the game aren't that much of a problem because we're actually able to play these games and have really positive experiences. Oh, what does that mean to us about people? Maybe it is possible. Maybe we can actually do stuff together. Games.
Thank you for that response. Is very insightful. Um, and then also on the topics of kind of the possibilities of games, are there any recent games or even game initiatives that you think are making a real difference in representation and inclusion?
Sure. Okay, representation and inclusion. Got it. There's so many dimensions of representation and inclusion that matter. Um, I'm trying to think of the. I have a lot of thoughts about this. The I'll talk about something that I'm working on. I'll talk about some things that I observe, right? So we're working something called Collegiate Games Challenge. So we're actually doing a thing right now, which is like Big Ten schools, like if you're a sports baller, like it's like Rutgers and Michigan and USC and UW and a bunch of schools. And we're doing a game competition, but it's really about competing and collaborating. What's neat about it, and you're talking about representation identity, is it's a competition where it's not just games versus games or whatever. It's also like the business people competing with the business people, and also the artists competing with the artists. So it's like trailers. There's like the alley category where there's like trailers and TikToks and graphics, and those people get to coexist. The point being, um, and the type of representation I'm talking about here is that there already exist biases between schools. We don't interact enough, right? We mostly coexist through like the Princeton Review, right? And then they sort us out, and that's how we coexist. We don't get to actually do a lot of stuff where you students get to do stuff together, right? Just hey, we're all in games, right? And so I was trying to do something where we have schools that are across the country and across different focuses. Like some schools are more academic, some schools are more media focused, some schools are more vocational, like I want to find a job. Some schools are more the craft, any number of combinations, right? And I was like, oh, that's great. How can we make that into a community, right? Because that's what we actually need. That's what I say to do is community, not transaction. And so we made a whole games contest about it, and we're giving away money and arcade machines and prizes, whole thing. Um, Inside of games themselves, I would say so in the narrative journey, and I'll call the Overwatch Marvel Rivals one journey because we've been talking about that a lot. What has been interesting to me about those games is that through the lens of superheroes, whether they be original or licensed, they have un, they have provided equity across gender and place of origin to characters. Okay, so people may identify something when they turn the game on, like, oh, I want to be like what I've been marketed is a hero to me. But as they play the games, they go, oh, no, no, no. Power comes in many forms. This is how I see the power expressed. I'm going to be someone who may be a different gender, race, orientation, place of origin, like all these things, all these differences are suddenly disrupted entirely by the play of this game, where it's finally good enough that it's like, oh, we're not trying to, I don't know, recreate the biases of Earth or of global historical conflict. No, no, no. These are heroes. You're playing a game. If you want to be good at the game, you're going to innately have a diversity first mindset because the most important thing is what people are capable of doing. Huh? You mean the powers? Yeah, yeah, yeah. The powers are the most important thing. Wait a second, right? Like, have we just disrupted a lot of isms all at once? Yes, we have, because right, you really are seeing the nature of the characters and playing these games together as teams to accomplish goals. Da 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 da. And I feel as though that, especially in the Overwatch universe, has afforded a lot of conversations around queerness, gender, race, and everything, right? Because they're like, oh, BT dubs, this is our universe. We exist. Like, different kinds of people exist. Here we are. You sure do love playing this game. So, oh, well, I guess yum, yum, right? Inclusion, right? Um, and I think it takes great works like that to overcome the efforts that have been invested in division, the efforts that are being invested in underestimating people, right? Like, I think now as much as ever, right? A lot of people, a lot of us are being underestimated about how we can be additive to our culture, to our history, to our society, to our military, to all the systems, to our educational institute, all of it, right? And so having models, many of which can be found in games, where once again, people can be as good as they are, is important, right? And having your attention, right? Not be, in this attention economy, not be all just like Black Mirror or all like, and I mean this in a positive critique kind of way. Um, I'd offer that TikTok gives you too much of what you want too quickly. These are my feelings. It is simply too easy for you to get that what you want. For those of you who've seen, you all see WALL-E? Ever seen WALL-E? Perfect. Remember the chairs and the guys are in the chairs and it gives them the shake and it gives them the screen and they become less and less involved because they don't have to decide anything. They're just being pushed more comfort. Anyone? Sorry, you in the back. TikTok, okay, right? Like in a perfect world, you would literally be laying in a little like in a sofa in a beanbag chair, gently swipe. In fact, if they could, you wouldn't have to swipe. You would just breathe, and breathing would swipe. It would just do it for you, right? And I think it's really important that that you engage with each other, that you, I don't know, value and respect each other. Once again, I know it's a long answer, but it's so true. Like, it's games are a place where you have an opportunity to create systems where people can treat each other well and be different. Okay, these things can both be true, right? And I would just say, I mean, to take the not Overwatch example, like something I love, hear me on this one. Games without reticules. Imagine that. Imagine a game where you don't have a reticule. No one is targeted. You just got to play, right? Right? But this sort of thing, yeah, games afford us a chance to model these behaviors in meaningful ways and to understand things around us. Before that, board games used to do it. It's like, right, Monopoly help you learn about the economy and life. Is Game of Life still a thing? Game of Life? The board game? No. Oh, no. Okay. Okay. So, Allie, you don't know. There's this game called the Game of Life. You literally get like a little car and you would go down life. So you can decide, for example, you could go to college or not go to college. And not going to college, you'd get to work faster, but you were risking not making as much money. Now, it wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't like an absolute, just like it's not an absolute in life, but you had to spin this wheel and you spun a wheel and, right? Your probabilities were better if you chose to go to college. And so you go on and you make these decisions, and the game was literally life. Like it went to the end, and it was a very meaningful way of exploring. Well, games now are that milieu, right, where a lot of the learning, exploration. I'll give it a different one. So VR chat. So I love virtual reality. So in VR, there are communities like VR chat where you're able so for me, if I put on a VR headset, then I don't have to navigate racism. You're like, what? Wait for it. I can just go in there. I can be whatever I want. I can be a soda can. I could be whatever. I could be Boba Fett, right? And so whatever that is, I don't have to experience it, right? And so what it's become is a fantastic place for people to explore gender and identity and race and socioeconomic and all sorts of dynamics, right? Safely, once again, safely, so whether they're discovering themselves or understanding others around them who are different, once again, this is an affordance of games and digital spaces that's happening in your lifetime. It's exciting. I know, another long answer, but these are great questions. Your questions are so good. I've got a lot to say.
That was a great answer to that question. The next question is, what are some standout examples of games that you feel have made a real-world social impact? What design choices made them effective?
Okay. I'll talk about my life and I'll talk about the world. So in my life, the game that probably had the real world social impact is a game called Sims 2. So if you're familiar with The Sims. So the real world impact The Sims had on my life was me and my husband are different. Okay. We have different personalities, different interests, different all sorts of things. We love each other, 20 years, but we're different, right? I was able to make us in The Sims. So I made us with our personalities in The Sims, made our house, all the things. It was only through being able to see it in third person that I was able to understand that the joy I have when someone arrives at the door to say hi, and I'm like, oh my God, people, was the same joy that he was getting when we put art up on the walls. Okay? Like, oh, he likes things in their place. He likes the aesthetic of what's going on here. It's making him go plus plus. I love it when people come over and we're talking about matching ideas. I'm going plus plus. Oh, got it. Neither of us is broken. We're just different people. If I can understand the joy they're having, I can be added to that, right? It's not something that needs to be changed or fixed or adult. Who they are. I oh, I need to communicate that this is bringing me joy the way this brings you joy. That is that is the single most impactful thing because this is who I'm sharing my life with, right? And it's a game. It was not like a book or we didn't talk it out. I literally played a video game and was like, oh, now I understand. Now, culturally in the world, the game has been most impactful. I feel as though there's a couple, and really as much for their longevity as their specific impact. And those games are Counter-Strike and League of Legends. And um and I say both of them because I believe Counter-Strike's been around probably your entire lives. Okay, but it's still going strong. Doesn't have a lot of commercials, doesn't need all the marketing, doesn't need the Super Bowl, doesn't need any of that stuff. It's just Counter-Strike, right? And whatever they have done to literally span a generation, okay, with this game and all of it, and I'm sure it's very nuanced, but I go, that is game, like games, right? Like in a true, like unfiltered, like some games, there's a thing of like, oh, let's compare it to the movie industry or something, or TV. Oh, games are bigger than movies, blah, blah, blah. No one does that with Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike just Counter-Strikes. That's what it does. People love it. Don't break it. Okay. League of Legends, uh, because it's just such a global phenomenon. So for me, and maybe for other people, it would be oh my God, what's it called? StarCraft. But for me, League of Legends and maybe FIFA too were the first games where it's like whether you're from here or you're from there, everybody knows somebody who's played this game. Like there's no more regionality to it. Like this is a global phenomenon. This is like knowing what Coca-Cola tastes like. Like it doesn't matter where you're from. Even if you don't drink soda, you know someone who drinks soda for the most part, right? In everything is true everywhere, in most communities, right? And I feel that those are the games where, like, in most communities, it wasn't like a phenomenon, it was more of a cultural identity. And so that's why those impact. And maybe I'll guess I'll throw Sims in there too. I feel as though Sims was part of the one of the biggest problems with. Can we talk about isms in this class? We'll talk a little about isms, just a little splash of isms. So there's a bias, there used to be a bias that games were primarily played by people who identified as male, and there was some sort of correlation, okay? Sims was one of the first games to disrupt that not fact, okay? Everyone at home, most gamers identify as females, it's a spoiler, okay? So, but Sims was one of the first games where I feel there was a pride in gaming which was distinctly feminine. Yeah, that's what I would say. And that was a change. And that there's obviously million zillion games, all games, in fact, are played by women. In case you don't know, all games are played by women. But like where there was like a pride that I was visceral for me. Forget the stats, forget the numbers, just visceral, like just you can feel it. Sims was the one that changed that for me. And now that's in the way back machine, once again, before you were born. But like nowadays, maybe not as much of a thing, but like at that time in history, it was definitely a palpable thing. And I I hope that, you're forming a generation where, of course, you welcome everyone to your game experiences and communities and all those things, but it just wasn't always that way.
Yeah, I definitely can recognize a lot of the things you're talking about. I've had other classes where we've kind of touched on the way that the demographic of games, like kind of, has always been in both camps, but what has appealed to different people has definitely like shifted, and certain games have obviously had more success because of their specific appeal that can cater to different groups of people.
I'd add for your consideration, this is super important. What has also changed is the counters. So whenever there's stats to you, whenever there's things like this, trends, you should ask yourself, who is doing the counting? Okay? With a new generation of executives and professors and creators who identify as female or don't identify as male, there has been a recounting of how do we even count? What questions are we asking? Where are we asking? Who are we polling in order to decide or determine more accurately what the facts are, right? And I say facts in facts that which is reported to you as fact, right? And so it's really important in all things, but we'll talk about in games as culture, to be like, oh, this is being presented to me as a fact. Who is telling me this fact? What is their desired outcome and interest? Because just talk about systems, one of the journeys of your young adulthood will be that there are systems that exist. Systems of employment, economics, all sorts of systems. And it's going to be up to you whether you perpetuate them or disrupt them, right? Like, right? You have to decide like what the world is that you want to be, like the games you want to play, the games you want to make, the games you want to buy, the all of it, classes you want to take. And so it's important to always just take a beat and go, who's talking to me? Am I trying to perpetuate the system in which they're operating, or am I trying to disrupt it because the world that I want to live in, I don't know, has your own rock and roll.
Yeah, that's very true. Our next question is kind of on the subject we talked about before, about how, there are different goals in creating a game, community impact versus the fact that obviously a lot of games are made to make a profit. So how do you balance that kind of, profit versus meaningful impact?
Sure.
Or do sometimes these two goals basically of making a game conflict?
Okay. It's a great question. So you're saying, how do you balance or reconcile or have coexist positive impact and profit? Okay. So I think that begins with your values, right? I can't tell you what your values are. Only you know the truth, right? Of what better to you in your heart, means. I'd say as a framework to consider, right, is that in the loop, right, consume, give me money, what I do with the money, okay, that let's just talk about money for a second, then we'll talk about non-monetary impact, right? So in monetary impact, just like cash, right, I'd argue that people have two basic motivations. Three. Sorry. One, they need the cash to eat right now. I'm hungry. I need cash. Give me money. I'm gonna go buy that burrito. Okay, that's one motivation. The other is to extract value. Okay, which is like, oh, I wanna buy a house in Cancun. I'm going to sell you this game or this product, because I want to go buy this house in Cancun. If I get enough money, bye. I'm going to be in Cancun. That's what I want. The third motivation is reinvestment. Okay. Oh, I want to make profit because I want to have Connecticut scholars at my studio. And so I need money for that. Right. And so I'm going to get this money from you. Right. I'm going to make profit, but my intention is actually to reinvest it in my values. Right. Which is cultivating the next generation. So my point being that even in the realm of just profit, right, your motivations really do matter. Like $1 is not $1 is not $1, right? Like the intention for that dollar really matters. And I think, once again, not to get too global, but inside of games, it's asking that question will help you better understand the motivations of the people who are trying to get that dollar from you. That's that. Non-monetary, like impact, right? Like just time, investment, growth. Like, so the difference between allies and accomplices, you know what ally, do you talk about allies at all? Allies, like, so sorry, queer culture, allies, like people who are not queer who are helping, right? So there's allies and accomplices, but it doesn't, not about queerness, it's about whatever your truth is, okay? Connecticut, Connecticut, this is a great example. Am I an ally or an accomplice? Here's the difference. An ally will do what they think is best for you, okay? They're like, you know what Connecticut needs? I don't know, some books from wherever. I'm going to send you some books, okay? An accomplice will do what you ask, okay? So in this case, Catherine call, come, let's talk for an hour, chop it up, talk to students, vibe it out. That's what they're asking, right? And so when you talk about impact, right, of games, there is the opportunity to do what you think is best for someone, right? They need to know about this. I'm going to teach you history. I'm going to put you in a dynamic that you're not used to because I think it'd be good for you to know what it's like to walk a mile in someone else's moccasins, whatever, right? But then the real where it gets interesting is the people who are engaged with community, right? Who are in the Discords, who are on like Blue Sky or X, Instagram, and actually listening, right? To have better impact with their games. Okay. And that is a different whole mindset of like, oh, I have a community. I want to be an accomplice. That means I've got to listen and take all that energy and actually put that into a game. Right. And that to me is the sort of like the impact, right? The empowering impact that you'll get out of some games, some developers, some very bespoke experiences. That's super interesting. I think outside of that, you'll get allyship. You know, you'll get representation. You'll get like, I don't know. Well, I was going to say Pride Month if that's a thing, but Pride Month, you get whatever. Like you'll get, you know, things which are like, this will be great. You will love it, right? But I have found, especially for the younger people, for your generation, that's not what you want. You know what you want. If someone asks you, you will tell them. All too often people are trying to tell you, but that sounds like an ad to you. And you're like, that's an ad. That's gross. Why don't you talk to me? Impact, right? But like, impact where you have agency. Versus impact where someone is, if we're crossing the street, okay, I can grab you by the hand and pull you across the street when I want you to go across the street. But that's generally not a pleasant experience. And it also does not teach you to cross the street. Okay, right? The first question is, do you want to cross the street? Lots of people never ask this question, but it's a very, very important question to ask people. Do you want to cross the street? If yes, do you mean now? Oh, you want to cross the street now? Okay, let's get this together. Okay. I know it's a metaphor, but hopefully it makes sense. Same thing with games. There's an opportunity to have incredible impact in dialogue with players, with communities that I feel we're just really in the first generation of in your lifetimes. And that in fact, it's something that you will be fluent in, that old people won't be fluent in, because you know what? We didn't grow up with the dialogue, right? We grew up with Pac-Man, we grew up with Mario, we grew up with games that we got into a box, we opened the box, we put the game in, we played the game. We didn't grow up with, oh, you're in Discord, we've been talking for years before the game came out, blah, 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 blah. Like, right? It's a different mindset about what impact can mean, what listening can mean, what together in a game community can mean, that I'm excited for y'all to do. I'll get to experience it. I get the benefit. I'll show up. Sounds great. What do you design? And it's just like when you join a Discord. You know, like in a Discord where it asks you what role to choose. And if you don't do the roles, then you don't really get to enjoy the Discord the same way. That's young people thinking. See, this is you thinking, asking the questions, before you even get in to do the stuff. Games, same thing, right? Impact is going to look like that. To me, this is Gordon's opinion. Impact's going to look like that going forward, where you're part of shared journeys, not just linear experiences that you get to push a button in every so often. That's my thought. But yeah, impact, yeah. Super awesome. Can't wait for you to do it. Get at it. I want to be impacted.
Amazing answer, as always. Next question is, what advice would you give to students who want to enter the game world, not just as designers, but as change makers?
As what now?
As change makers.
Oh, like they want to change the culture? Is that what you mean? Or okay. Well, the most important thing to changing, so I'll use this word milieu again. Games are just a milieu. Like if you're trying to change communities, that's people. That's not a new thing, right? And so I would say the number one thing would be to be involved in communities that mirror your values first, so that you can be learning best practices, right? That you could add to your quiver of arrows of things you bring to a game community, right? Like it'd be like, I'm trying to think of something which isn't too volatile. I'm left-handed. Okay, there we go. I'm left-handed. And if you wanted to help left-handed people in a game, well, first you should hang out with left-handed people. And you'll hear us complain about scissors and writing, how it smudges on our hand, and all sorts of mugs where the writing's on it backwards. There's all sorts of things that if you're left-handed, you'll be like, oh yeah, left-handed stuff, right? And then you'd be from a position of respect, knowledge, trust to engage with left-handed people inside the game. We might be like, oh, well, you know, these mouse controls are annoying, kind of like scissors, right? Or whatever it is that left-handed people need in order to thrive, right? And just take that across whatever axes you choose as metaphor and analogy. But my point being that if you want to be a change maker, it's like being a leader. Then start leading, right? You don't need to go into a game to do that. You need to be doing it and then applying those skills to games, game community, the games you make, the people you work with, the games you promote, the guests you have at UConn, dot, 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 right? There's any number of ways that you can express it. But that light switch of being a change maker, I would say don't wait for the games. It's the light. Transformer Spark. I was talking about before. Original voice. That original voice Transformer Spark is not tied to your proficiency, right? Is not tied to your social network. It's inside of you. So I would say the number one thing would be to be doing more than zero every day in the type of change that you want to make, whatever that is. And then you will apply it organically to games because you are young people who are born in the games. So that part will be easy for you. Does that make sense? Or I mean, I can give more. I can talk about for my life. Like, I lead the gay game professionals for the world, but first I had to come out. Right? I had to be out. I had to be amongst the LGBTQIA plus community. Right? I had to, right, to be before I could lead. Right? Similarly, you're on your journeys, you need to be, and then you can apply that being in game spaces.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Kind of segueing into our next question, have you seen any role, or rather, what progress have you seen throughout your career in the way that queer voices are treated in the games industry?
Wow, that's a great question. So, number one, progress. There being queer voices. So queer, like changing what, like words matter. Okay. And so part of what is so great about hearing you ask about queer voices in 2025 is that queer, depending on who was saying the word, did not always follow with happy things in the past. But you're like, oh, queer voices in the game sheet. I love this for us. So this, you're experiencing the work. Okay. So there was a time before there was queer anything positive. then there was queer. Now in your time, there's queer voices, right? You're posing the question. And I'm able to go like, oh, have you been to the LGBTQ game archive? You could look throughout history, right? There's academic work being done about, you could literally follow the entire history of queerness in games on the internet, like today, right? That did not exist in the 90s or the aughts, right? That's something of the 2010s and 2020s. I think not only the existence of characters, but I think the collective work. I mean, that's the biggest difference, right? Like moving from exceptionalism to identity, right? Because the question used to be, well, is there a queer? Is that character queer? Is this queer? Is that queer? Right? Like, is there more than zero? Used to be the question. Now, there is so much of a body of work. Once again, for those of you at home, you go to lgbtqgamearchive.org, I think, .org. We'll find it in the chat. But the point being, there is a huge body of work, both by and about queer people. And for, once again, those of you at home, we'll talk about queerness through my lens. Queerness can mean whatever you want it to mean. Here's how I'll define it for the sake of this discussion. So there is your gender identity, right? Do you physically embody the gender that you are? Okay. And you can be queer across this axis relative to each other, right? Where our physical bodies don't match our known gender, or our gender is fluid, it's moving, right? Or we are agender. All these things can coexist. That's just one axis. Another axis is our attraction, right? Are you attracted to people with whom you share like a physical or gender identity, or not, or a different, right? Different identities, or once again, a fluid one or a agent, right?
Sorry, Gordon, to interrupt you, but I think you're having audio issues. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I can't hear you either, Gordon. It suddenly went out.
Oh, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, just for everyone at home, the problem is me. You got to be accountable. I pushed the button on my microphone when I was talking. I won't do it again, but there's a little button here on top. Oh, wait, I can show you. Sorry, visuals. Boop, 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 boop. I pushed the button. Audio. Okay, it was me.
Yeah.
I got excited.
You were at before you went out, you were at the talking about, I guess, sexuality.
Oh my gosh, way back. Okay, queerness. Okay.
It was like 15 seconds before.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just say that. So what I was doing, and I'll do it again real quick, was I was just sort of defining queerness across three axes, just for the sake of this discussion. And those axes were your physical identity with your gender. The other was your attraction, right? Are you attract to people that are similar to you, different to you, whatever, right? And then the third was your expression. And by that I mean, like, do you wear sports clothes or do you wear suit and tie? Do you wear rock and roll or do you wear roller skates or both? Right? And that people can be queer to each other who share identity and orientation, but the way they express themselves, right, is another axis of queerness. My point being that when you think about queer representation in games, right, it is about all these differences that can take place, because many of the isms are really about queerness to each other, right? And whether that be across race or faith or age or gender or orientation or socioeconomic, or I don't know, you went to UMass, whatever, right? Like, people have big feelings, okay, about these differences. And one of the things which games have done is enabled people to embody folks who are different than them. Okay. Like when it's at its best, when it's at its worst, it's kill anything different than you, the game. Okay. As fast as possible. Okay. That's probably the worst of it. But when it's at its best, it gives us a chance to explore an enhanced version of ourselves or someone or something or some perspective totally different than ours, but in the safe framework of play, right? And be like, okay, I can roll through the scenario, I can imagine this, I can do this, but I know there's some walls around this. When the game is over, the game is over, and that's okay, right? And I feel as though the same way that like often for queerness, queer media is described as like a big bridge for folks. Like, because I didn't know anybody queer until I saw Will and Grace, or I saw someone in a movie or a TV show or whatever, right? Well, now that's olden times. For you young people, you're able to engage with queerness or race or gender on Instagram, on TikTok, in games, as characters you play with, play against, as teammates, in all sorts of ways, visible and invisible to us, right? That enable you to form your own values and your own opinions and your own sense of meaning grounded in action, not just marketing to you. And um, so to answer your question, like, so for me personally in my little life journey, like, yeah, Sims, of course, because the first game where you could play queer couples, like and be like in but still be in the tableau, right? And function. But today I'll go back to Overwatch and like seeing Tracer on the cover of a game for me, right? Where until that moment, I think, and this is me as a grown person, folks will be like, oh, it's great to be included, but it's not very marketable, right? People are just not going to buy this, right? You need to be in June. You need to be, you know what I mean? You need to be in the corner, you know what I mean? But like I like to say, like the icing, not the batter. And by that I mean you're nice to have, but you can be easily removed if someone doesn't like your taste, right? So seeing Tracer on the cover of Overwatch was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, we're in the batter. Like this is in Walmart, Target. This is lore, right? That we as queer people exist in the game space, like no take backsies. And by the way, not even tied to romance. Like there's an idea of like, queerness as romance versus that you could be queer by yourself and just exist, like just be, right? And so, yeah, once again, seeing her on the cover, not as a love interest, not as a, object of whatever, uh, to me, from a mainstreamy company, was probably the single most historic thing I can think of. But that's from my experience. You, as young people, once again, have your own journey, right? Where you have your own narratives around queerness and gender and sex and all sorts of things. So, what impacts you the most is going to be totally different because you have all sorts of different. There might have been queer Pokemon. I don't know. There's a lot of them, right? They got to be there somewhere, right? And so you may have a very different, you know what I'm saying? Like what impacts, and what matters is going to be totally different. And that's awesome. That's progress.
For the next question, what conversations do you wish more game designers were having right now?
Oh, I think there are more conversations around what I'd call lifetime joy versus lifetime value. There's a lot of energy put into the lifetime value of a player. It's how much money they will put in to this game before they churn out. I think that lifetime joy, right? Like, how much fun could someone have playing this game? Is it infinite? Is it intended to not be infinite? Like, okay. And maybe even starting to understand metrics around that and what that could mean that people had a that we designed player goals, which we might describe as fun, right? And fun takes many forms. So if I go a game is fun, wait, you okay, sorry, a little more homework. So there's a paper called Mechanics, Dynamics, Aesthetics, which is like it's a very short paper. It's like 2 to 4 pages. But what it talks about is that players experience aesthetics of play. So they experience like learning or collaboration or competition or a great story, right? Designers create mechanics for games. Like these are the rules of the game. This is how it plays. This is what the button does. This is how high it jumps. Blah 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 blah. Right? How high they jump. Pronouns. The point being that really understanding the aesthetics of play, of fun that people are experiencing, and not just how to monetize those, but how to just cultivate them healthily is the dream, right? This is what keeps you from making a compulsion engine because any of you could learn to make a slot machine, okay? Any of you. And recolor it and reskin it, come with newer, better slot algorithms, which are driven around compulsion, okay? At the end of it all, versus around being compelling, right? And being experiences that leave you better for the time you spent. Okay. Right. Like my hope is that games, and it's not the obligation of all games, but some games will leave you better for the time you spent playing them. Right. So you are proud to say it, not like, oh, I got stuck playing that game again. I don't know how to get out of it. But like, no, I played the game's great. I can't wait to tell you about it and share it with you. And, you know, for whatever reason, right? The intent is to leave people better. And I feel as though spending time on that and maybe spending time on how do we even measure that is something I wish we talked more about. Um, I wish someone was like the best at it. Like, oh no, I don't know how to monetize, but I bring you the most joy with this game or the most learn. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like, do you remember? You guys ever play typing tutor games to teach how to type? No? All right, what's a thing? Trust me on this one. It's a thing. And the typing tutors at the end of the day would teach you to type better and to type faster. It's fairly straightforward, right? Whatever the game was, like that's what it was doing. Well, I feel as though there's other values and information and learning goals that you could have be part of games. Like, why not? Right? And then I wish, yeah, my dream, yeah, is I guess for cultural growth that helps us navigate alongside this economic growth. I wish that in a world where folks are so divided and so adamantly so, and have tools in place to stay divided. That's maybe the difference. They have tools, digital tools to stay divided. That's what their purpose is. I wish that games were like more aggressively like, oh no, we're gonna be vibing after this. Yeah. I love this for you, but we're okay. So I get it. You've got differences, but this game is gonna bring you closer together. So unless you don't want to be closer together, then don't play the game because that's what this game does, right? I wish there was more of that.
Thank you for that. And then this is going to be our last question,
Okay.
at least for the streamed portion of this. How have you handled moments of doubt or pushback, either just in your general career or specifically when advocating for diversity in a resistant industry?
Oh, got it. Okay, so um this goes as full circle to your question about queer voices. So I lead an organization, nonprofit called Gay Gaming Professionals. Now, in the past, just for context, I've run the International Game Developer Association, I've run the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, I've run many nonprofits. The challenge opportunity, right, is that because of negative bias towards queer people, right, then uh, a question that might be asked is, well, do you want to participate in this activity? I'm not gay, right? And I might be like, I didn't ask if you were gay, but people sort of, ascribe, right? And the challenge then becomes, well, are you able to have values and do good things? Like, so we have a scholars program. So we have scholars. We had 50 scholars at GDC. You don't know, of course, you know, Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, right? So we had 50 young people from Massachusetts to Hawaii, from Florida to Washington, all at GDC. And not because they were gay. It's because in our case, we did a scholars program for students who do community service in underestimated communities. So whether it be women or Latine or neurodiverse or BIPOC or whatever, military, it doesn't matter. Just doing work to help the underestimated and studying games, right? But we are still called the gay game professionals. We are GGP, right? That's who we are. And so there's resistance because, like, well, why are you doing this, right? You're gay, do gay stuff. But that voice isn't our voice, right? Our voice is to do the things that we want to do to impact the world in a positive way. That's what we want. That's what equity and liberation and freedom, it's the freedom to be not what you're telling me you want me to be, but to be who I am. Right? And so one of the tensions that I navigate, right? And once again, your mods may vary, will be distinguishing between allies and accomplices. And by that, I mean people who want what they'll tell you they think is best for you through their lens of comfort versus what you want to be that is inside of you to impact the world, which may not fit their mold. It just might be true. And so for me, to answer your question, that's something that I continually navigate, is trying to find people who are like, oh, we get you, human. You want to help young people thrive and make the world better. That's what you're into. Got it. How can we help you as you are, right? Versus, I did ChatGPT. Here's the gay stuff you want to do for the gays. Here's a list. Do these things, right? The hardest part can be to sort of to navigate those questions and realize that, like, allies aren't bad. Like, they're allies, right? That's all. They're important. Allies are great, right? But you also need accomplices. And that would be if I was to take myself back in time to, when I was your age, I'd be like, it's okay to have both, right? And you don't have to fix one to be the other. You don't have to be like, you're doing it wrong, right? No, different people just have different things to give. That's okay. It took me a long time to get there, even with myself, right? Because like I said, I had to come out. I had to go on my journey. I had to decide who I want to be and like all these like life stuff, right? That I was living. More or less, how could I engage with people who want to help so that I can overcome resistance, right? Because the other resistance are people who don't want you to exist. So there's other people who, I don't know what the opposite of an ally is, but whatever it is, they actually like, no, it'd be really great if you weren't. You could just be less right now. How about that, right? And there's no negotiating. That's, once again, that's where they're at. That's what they want, right? And for me, I don't tend to reside in those spaces very much. Like I, Gordon, tend to reside with like allies and accomplices. That's just me. And you might go, oh, but the world is terrible. You're right. There's very challenging people in the world. However, it's up to me where I spend my time. That's the freedom that people before me worked really hard for so that I could do. Right? Because they didn't have the choice. But now I do have the choice. So I'm choosing. Now it's your time. And I can look at you and be like, oh my gosh, trust me, I worked really hard. Be you. Not trying to control you. Just want you to flap, flap, flap. Be yourselves. That's the dream. Who knows what that is? I don't have to understand. I'm old. You have to understand. You're young. You've got to, and then be nice to each other. That's it. Like that's the whole thing. And so I guess, sorry, the long-winded way, the way that I navigate adversity is by leaning into opportunities like this one to speak at UConn, where I can be myself for an hour. And you know I'm not kidding. This is what I'm like, right? This is the dream. Back when I was younger, was my whole self. God, someday it's going to be awesome. It's today.
Thank you, Gordon. That was a great way to end this conversation, really. To think about the moment that we're in now, and despite also the adversity that is still out there, we still live in a country and a space where we can say who we are and move forward with our lives and our careers. So thank you for all of those words of wisdom. It's been very thought-provoking and inspirational, I think. Thank you, Gordon, for being so open with us and authentic and generous in sharing your experience, your vast experience, and your creative vision. And thanks also to our co-hosts, Ali
Yeah,
and
co-host. Let's go.
Aqua. Yay, for moderating. And a big shout out to Musawir Abrar, our event producer behind the scenes. Check out our entire 2025 lineup, as well as our great back catalog of speakers starting from 2021 at dmd.uconn.edu/diverse.
Yes.
This is to our YouTube audience out there. And don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube and follow our other social media channels at UConn DMD to see all of our department's great content. So thanks again to our students and everyone who worked together to produce this wonderful event. And most of all, thanks to all of you out there in our virtual audience for joining us today. I hope all of you are as inspired by Gordon Bellamy's work and insights as we are in this Zoom room. There is so much more to be done, but if we continue to inspire and mentor our young creatives together, we can change this digital world for the better, and the real world, in fact. Tune in next spring for our 2026 Diverse Perspective series as we continue this journey. Goodbye, everyone.
Amazing. And thank you both. Yeah, please add me like on LinkedIn and stuff, or Instagram or X, or whatever you're comfortable. Sorry, consensually. Sorry, I invite you, but not expect you to join me on the social platform that you consent that you would like to be added on if you'd like to be added. Sorry, invitation. Not dynamic. Not see. It's so important to remember like the power dynamics because like I always forget like I'm a professor. Like not what I mean. It's just an invitation. I have no needs. I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Now we're going to class. Oh, now.